Revolutionary salutations to the people of Zimbabwe. Comradely salutations to the suffering masses of our people. Welcome to the A-Tete. My name is Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo. I'm joined by none other than Comrade Ostalos Siziba. But before I introduce Comrade Ostalos, I would like to express our sincere apologies to the people of Zimbabwe and the fans of the show who have been waiting for a very long period of time for this show. But all things come or work out for good for those who wait. Patience is a virtue. So, fellow citizens, sit back and relax as we talk about the state of Zimbabwe since the November 2017 coup. Comrade Ostalos, welcome to the show. Introduce yourself. You don't need to introduce yourself. Greet the people of Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much. Greetings to the people of Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much, Comrade Ostalos. So, Comrade Ostalos, it's been long since we last recorded a A-Tete. I think the last time we recorded a A-Tete, it was with Comrade Maj, ironically. It was around 2020, during the COVID-19 period. But because of certain circumstances of life, you were deeply involved with the politics of the movement. We were studying, Basoko also was equally studying in Norway. So we couldn't record the show. But be that as it may, I think now that we are sort of settled back in Zimbabwe, it's noble that we have this discussion. And as you are aware, Comrade Ostalos, we want to talk about the state of our country since the November 2017 coup. Our show today is going to be about the politics, the economics, the social, and lastly, touch on the alternative, because you cannot be on the show and fail to talk about the alternative led by Advocate Nelson Chamisa. So, Comrade Ostalos, I want you to touch on the state of Zimbabwean politics first. Since the coup in 2017, there were promises made by the coup plotters and the beneficiary of the coup, who is occupying number 1 Chancellor Avenue currently and state president, that we're going to democratize, we're going to reform, we're going to make sure that there are human rights, we're going to make sure that Zimbabwe enjoys the values, aspirations, and demands of our constitution. What is your perspective since November 2017?
Thank you very much, Brother Mlambo. I think that 2017 was a huge missed opportunity in the Zimbabwe's blocked transition. You know that since 1980, Zimbabwe has been grappling with failed transitions. We've had elections since 1980, most of them being contested, and Mugabe retaining power without the mandate of the people. So 2017 presented...
Just to stop you there, well, some people might be confused. 1980, the elections were highly contested because you need to tell the people that Joshua Nkomo was on record saying that the 1980 elections were not free, fair, and credible. So our people can go and check Joshua Nkomo's book, Father Zimbabwe's book called The Struggle of My Lifetime. So that people might think that these are just Ostalos just throwing things. No. There were contestations around the
historical fact that elections in this country since 1980, all of them to this date have been subjected to legal and political challenges. So election by their very nature, they must leave society united after choosing a leader of their choice.
Yes.
But in Zimbabwe, it is the opposite. Yes. It leaves society divided. So the 2017 intervention by the military, the coup d'etat presented an opportunity of closing the chapter of more than 3 decades of Mugabe's misrule. So what that transition was supposed to lead to, was supposed to lead towards a democratic breakthrough. Because in many jurisdictions, the military intervention in the body politic, as was coined, that there are criminals surrounding the president. It is supposed to be a process like what happened in Nigeria under the capable leader
of Olusegun Obasanjo. Yeah, in 1990.
That we take over the reins of power with the intention to return power back to civilian authority, so that we restore back confidence and restore power in the hands of the people. The Zimbabwean constitution is very clear.
Yes.
Power resides in the hands of the people.
The authority.
Parliament gets its authority from the people.
Yes.
The executive attains its authority from the people.
The judiciary. Oh, yes.
The National Democratic Revolution,
yes,
that we are prosecuting, just like the Liberation Project,
yes,
derives its central strategic objective towards uplifting the concrete lives of the ordinary masses, which are the suffering masses of our people. Yes. So you realize that the national revolution, as was executed by A-Tete, Potongo Gara, Mugabe, Joshua Nkomo, and the democratic struggle, as was started by Morgan Tsvangirai, Isaac Matongo, and others,
yes,
still associated with the central objective to uplift the lives of the ordinary people.
So that's what was that the premise of the coup?
So the premise of the coup was philosophized under the adage that we must take power from those who have criminally accumulated in the president and take it back to the people. But that opportunity was missed. Where did we miss the opportunity?
Yes.
We missed it when Patrick Chinamas started to pronounce that Chinu Chedu. Therefore, taking it from the people and the collective efforts of different sections of society, the civil society, the church, the opposition, and other players, and the masses of our people who had marched alongside the many military fatigue. So that presented the first instance of blocking the transition. The second instance, of course, then became the 2018 election.
Yes.
The 2018 election also then exacerbated and accelerated this crisis that we're facing to this very day, where citizens, after saying that we have voted, and our vote seems to, there's an attempt to manipulate our vote. People occupied the streets, particularly in Harare, Bulawayo, and other capitals. You saw that for the first time in the history of our country, live bullets were fired on an armed civilian. That, Brother Mlambo, now, what that meant is that it signaled the collapse of the Zimbabwean social contract. It meant naturally that those who are governing now, one, become loyal to the men and women in military fatigue. It meant that we have automatically suspended the constitution. Secondly, it meant that the citizens who are in the ghetto, in the countryside, realize that those who govern don't have our mandate. They have the mandate of those that gave them power and not us, the people. And therefore, all the myriad of challenges that we're facing today are born out of the fact that a government must be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And when you don't have that, it means that there's a broken down social contract. And then as we're going to discuss the challenges of a broken down social contract, to me, the summary.
Thank you so much, Nqobizitha. So we missed an opportunity, Comrade Basobo would call it a sui generis opportunity, to cleanse what was done in November 2017 and make sure that there is a democratic breakthrough. Some people in civil society like Tony Rila, Professor Ipo Mandaza, had argued that actually we didn't need an election in 2018. What we needed was a national transitional authority. There would the arguments. I mean, that's the beauty of people sharing ideas and stuff like that. But these were all sentiments coming from a good place, that this country, if we are to have a complete departure from Robert Mugabe and his legacy of bad governance, of violation of human rights, of economic maladministration, of deterioration of the social contract, we need to come together and work together. But the 2018 election was an opportunity which was missed. And Zimbabweans might remember that there was a Moshante Commission of Inquiry into the massacres that were done in the streets of Harare and other parts of the country, where people were killed simply for exercising their right, which is enshrined in Section 59 of the Constitution, to demonstrate and petition. And no one has been held accountable for those actions. So the culture of impunity that was in Mugabe's time,
in fact, Brother Mlambo, it's not about no one being accountable. It's not only that, but it's the mere fact that one of the people who cited in the report to have been at the center of the killings of 2017
August
is actually now in charge in the hierarchies
of the command element.
So it tells the story of how broken and the challenges that are facing our country.
Anyway, moving on, comrade. So 2018 comes, we have an election. I mean, there was a smoke screen. There was not a free, fair, and credible election. People are massacred. Some people say, okay, this has happened. We hope that there will be performance legitimacy, that the current guy will get. Maybe he will perform on the economy, and this will, completely shred apart with the sins of the past. But when we look at from 2018 to 2020, that period alone, economically, what would be your comments around the performance of the economy? Mutuli Ngube being Minister of Finance, the TSP, NTS1, the 2019 marches against austerity, and again the further massacring of our people. Do you think the performance of the coup class of 2017 post the massacre of our people in 2018 has cleansed or has atoned for their many sins which they have committed against the people?
I think that there was a lack of understanding by half-baked intellectuals who were supporting the intervention. Their belief generally was that we can liberalize the economy without liberalizing politics. Many people, particularly in the diplomatic community, supported the intervention on the basis that we can choose stability over democracy.
People like Katrina Liang.
Which is a mist and the lack of understanding of about the relationship between politics and the economy.
Yes.
When we went to the university, there is a debate that is still permanent in political science. That what comes first between politics and the economy. But history and Zimbabwe in particular has proven that you cannot have solutions to the economy without dealing with the political. You cannot choose stability over democracy. You cannot choose stability over the choice of the people. So those who govern, they must have a mandate of the people. So the missed opportunity was that, if you remember Mthuli Ncube coming into play, his commitment to the people of Zimbabwe was that, number one, if I get to be the Minister of Finance, I'll remove the bond notes, because a basic principle of economics says bad money drives out good money. When Mthuli Ncube came in, it clear promises, and it comes back to the one who has been also given the RBZ right now. June 2. They don't understand that the problem in this country is not lack of commitment at the level of technocrats and sound economic policy. It is a political problem because of the interference, what I call executive tyranny. Where the executive wants to spread its tentacles and its dainty hands into the independent institutions of the state. So Mthuli Ncube commits to the people that are going to remove bond notes. He then realized that no. The Zimbabwean currency is an instrument of arbitrage for the regime. It is one that has been used to sustain the illegal and the regime stay on power. And when he goes there, he was then reminded that no. We need to print more money. Use your intelligence to ensure that we are printing more money.
And there was also John Manguj and RBZ. So it became a perfect combination.
You get the point.
Of economic madness.
Because they failed to realize that the RBZ in this country has been used as an instrument for quasi-fiscal activities to sustain the regime.
Remember the farm mechanization program.
You get the point. If you look at the debt that we've accrued in this country and the role of the RBZ, it is because the executive continuously interfere on the activities of these state institutions.
So you are saying since between 2018 to 2023, the economy didn't change. So performance legitimacy did not come. So what has happened in the economy?
What has happened in the economy, number one, Brother Lamb, is that our domestic debt has increased. Our external debt has increased. Secondly, we've got currency volatility. We've moved from ZIG. In fact, we moved from RTGS, which was said to be 1:1. We went to the bond note. ZANU-PF members of parliament given slogans. One of them prominently being Chinotimba, saying no, the bond note is for easy change. He did not understand what these political elites were doing. So the bond note came in, it collapsed. The RTGS came in, it collapsed. What happened is that we went back to what Zimbabweans want. We went back to the US dollar. The government started to criminalize anyone who uses a foreign currency. They ended up saying, no, let's go back again to the US dollar and the rand and the bull, informally and so forth. After that, we went to an election, more money being printed. In fact, what people don't understand, the coming in of ZIG came in because they knew that they printed more money for the election. The RTGS, the bond had collapsed effectively. So
I think it had lost over 900% of its value.
You get the point. So that currency effectively had collapsed. But to save it, they said, no. Let's introduce another currency. It's now ZIG money. I don't know whether they're inspired by Bob Marley or ZIG that we knew from the Zota Zimbabwe. But
ZIG Chuma. Anyway, Comrade Ostalos, so you touched on an important aspect of the economy which most people are not talking about, which is the public debt. And it is ironic, if not said, that when these guys came in, and this guy who occupies number 1 Chancellor Avenue came in, he said, we are going to liberalize the economy. Zimbabwe is open for business. And when he said Zimbabwe is open for business, he tasked Mthuli Ncube to write a document to, implement or to complement his economic vision. And Mthuli Ncube drafted a document called the Transitional Stabilization Program in 2018. He was supposed to run from October 2018 to October 2019. His argument was, we want to stabilize the economy, and things didn't stabilize. In actual fact, that very the economy grew by reverse in -6%. But more importantly and more worryingly, foreign direct investment in Zimbabwe has declined since 2018 from $745 million to around $194 million by 2020. So between 2018 and 2019, FDI had declined by over $300 million. But you are saying you're opening the country for business, and the TSP had said we want a private sector-led economy. And I'll come to the ideological confusion of the Second Republic or whatever they call it, that you are saying you want a private sector-led economy as a ZANU-PF government. But the constitution of ZANU-PF says ZANU-PF is a socialist party which believes in the principles of Marxism-Leninism. And Marxism-Leninism is antithetical to a private sector-led economy. Rather, they believe in Marxism-Leninism. The driving forces of economic production and the economy is the state. Yeah. And the ZANU-PF government, since 1980 to date, has failed to maintain and properly, govern state-owned enterprise, which is an aspect of the alternative which we are going to talk about. But coming back to the public debt, now it's around $18 billion that we owe. $18 billion we owe it. That's the total of our domestic debt and our, external debt. The external debt is more than the domestic debt. The external debt, what people don't know is that much of the external debt is not actually money that we borrowed, really. But these are penalties that are being imposed on us for failing to service our debt. So it's arrears. And recently, if not 2 or 3 years ago, they engaged the former president of Mozambique, the former statesman Joaquim Chissano, and the FDB to say let's have a debt and arrears clearance strategy. It collapsed after the 2023 election plebiscite because the creditors who are Britain, the United States, Europe, and the EU said the elections are not free, fair, and credible, as evidenced by the report from SADC and the reports from the Commonwealth Observer Mission and stuff like that. So the public debt issue remains one of our biggest problems because we cannot access lines of credit,
of course,
on concessional basis. What is the regime doing now, Comrade Ostalos?
So here is the problem. And we said this when we went into Parliament. In the budget committee. The lack of understanding by the regime. So this is the first challenge of the so-called Second Republic. Number one, unlike Mugabe's regime, there is lack of the role of intellectuals. Until Gramsci talk about the role of organic intellectual thought leaders.
In his prison letters.
Whose role and objective is to inform class projects. So what we have now is a ruling class without ruling ideas. Mugabe, I remember when I go to my history of the University of Zimbabwe, there were days where Mugabe's motorcade will come to the University of Zimbabwe. Not to lecture, not to speak, but to listen to intellectuals who were informing ZANU-PF as a class project. There were lecturers and
especially in the Department of Political Science
and the Department of History who were informing Mugabe as intellectuals. Though Mugabe would implement other things, but you could see when Mugabe speaking at the United Nations or in SADC summit that though this one is a fascist, but he has got a semblance of ideological clarity and an ideological disposition, particularly in advancing the agenda of the
Africanism and stuff like that.
So there was that clarity and ideological...
Even on indigenization.
So what happens, the role of public intellectuals when they inform the ruling class, it informs government policy. So government policy is also taken from the party's ideological disposition that we're a socialist Marxist party, and therefore our program is Kustaru and therefore our program is free education and
free healthcare
and so forth.
Social protection.
That's why Mugabe would fight to protect Wange because he had some consciousness as an environmentalist. The guy was a fascist, but he had ideological clarity. But the class of 2017 now relegated the role of intellectuals and replaced it now
with Warakashi,
and
Faz
and Lutist, and you see the face that are dominant now is Chivayo, is people with criminal records. So they replaced the role of intellectuals. So now let's go back to the debt question, because the intellectuals were going to inform the regime that this debt that we're accruing, where is it coming from? What is the history of the Zimbabwean debt question? Number one, we failed to negotiate in the Lancaster negotiations because we took the debt that was
750 million,
750 million from the Smith regime. But what was that money for? Smith took this money to fund and buy helicopters
to fight
that
our
were
own
killing
people
our people.
who were fighting for independence.
This is the same problem that South Africa is facing. I was looking at the South African debt issue. Mandela and the ANC also negotiated and inherited apartheid debt. But the apartheid was declared a crime against humanity.
So why do you have to service the debt of a crime against humanity?
So people were supposed to negotiate with lenders.
And tell them, no, this debt should be cleared though.
It should be cleared on the basis that it is a debt.
We don't pay.
Kill people. Right? So that is the first problem of our debt. The second element of our debt was a debt accrued by Mugabe from the Bank of Brazil. In that agriculture scheme where people they're stealing money and funding their patronage. So on that basis, we're supposed to renegotiate that debt. Secondly, also the debt of England. We owe it from the Bank of England and so forth.
Deutsche Bank and stuff. In fact, Ostalos, one of our airplanes was confiscated at Gatwick International Airport in London by General Motors as part of this debt that we owe, because they said you're owing us as a company, private company, but you're failing to pay, so we're seizing your aeroplane. So they seized our aeroplane because we couldn't service the debt where we borrowed money from General Motors for spare parts for our aeroplanes and stuff. We owe countries like Kuwait, can you imagine, countries like Spain, for helicopters and military aircraft that we borrowed money from, and we bought military. Was it necessary to actually buy aircraft?
So you see,
when our people were suffering during Easter for
so that is the problem with lack of prioritization. So what we're supposed to do was to look at the history of the Zimbabwean external and domestic debt, and then have an audit of the debt.
Yes.
There's not been any audit right now. We are not sure. Some of it is understated. When we become in government, we realize more debt
like A-Tete
that has been borrowed. We don't know. I remember there's a statement from the Chinese bank, from the Chinese government about debt forgiveness on Zimbabwe. So all these things need to be looked into.
We are not sure of the actual amount.
We must audit our debt. Once we audit our debt, citizens, because they're the ones who pay as taxpayers, ought to know how much was borrowed
for what purpose,
so that there's accountability, and then we are able to renegotiate our debt.
But this you are saying when you become government, because clearly this class it cannot be. Let's move on in the interest of time, Comrade Ostalos. So we have looked at 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. There was a commodity boom. So what we mean by a commodity boom is that price of commodities like your platinum, your gold, minerals, the prices were up on the world market. So it meant more revenues for us. But we didn't see a reinvestment of that revenue from our minerals into, i.e., building more schools, building more hospitals, renovating Pilo, renovating Paririnyatwa. You know what I mean? Tare Provincial Hospital, Gwere, and stuff like that. So if in the midst of a commodity boom we failed even to improve the livelihoods of our people, what then should we do when we are talking about borrowing money to assist our people with food aid? Couldn't we have used the revenue we got from the commodity boom to build more dams, so that the little rain we got, we would have harvested the water, and that water would have been used for irrigation, for example? We are moving on into the second segment of our show now, which is the economic, the social, food insecurity, and the current state of Zimbabwe now. I want to touch on food insecurity and what it means for the legacy of the land reform program, which is now 24 or so years old, which was necessary, but failing to feed our own people. What would you say has been the driver of food insecurity in Zimbabwe?
Thank you very much. First, because you ask on the question of land.
Yes.
I want to restate this position that we believe that the land revolution was a necessity in this country, because the liberation struggle was premised on these two central objectives: universal suffrage, which is the sacrosanct right of Zimbabweans to choose leaders of their own choice. Secondly was land and the economy. And it's an indictment on the liberation project and those that claim to associate with that. That after more than 3-4 decades, we have the challenges that we face as a country. Zimbabwe is an agro-based economy. Right now, there was a report that came to Parliament from the Ministry of Agriculture. It states that 51% of Zimbabweans are food insecure.
51%, more than half of the population.
That is 7.7 million of Zimbabweans
are food insecure.
And of those 7.7 million, 1.8 million of those are in the urban areas. So that is, it answers why there is urban poverty.
Yes.
And I'm going to touch on the social implications of urban poverty.
But before that, the statistic 4.5 million children who require school meals. That's
course.
Also what the report that you are alluding to
that
say.
Government
Cabinet
must be able to provide.
Yes. 4.5 million children.
That is predominantly.
So that's child
almost
poverty.
Every child in this country.
They will need school.
Who are at school.
Yet the president is begging for money.
So and I'm going to answer why we are where we are. So this is equated to drought.
Yes.
But what you do, the reason why we had a report in the Environment Committee that came when we were in Parliament from the Met Department that we don't have equipment, we don't have support. But it is the role of the Met Department to predict
and make forecast.
To say this is what is going to happen and you must prepare. We cannot be, Brother Mlambo, be defeated by people who existed, the Israelites.
Yeah.
During the time of Joseph, they were able to use dreams to say there's going to be drought. Their simple solution was, let us talk. You don't need scientists.
But now
when there is a prediction world over that there's going to be El Nino,
so the natural thing,
we must produce, we must harvest, and we must talk. We must support agriculture. And genuinely, not through the funny and corrupt command fishery. We were supposed to be deliberate, brother. You know what? I will take you back shortly to history. Ian Smith, when he was hit by sanctions, he knew that I'm going to have problems with the hunger because I've been closed out of the world. What should I do? The first thing I must produce. He took farmers and he took them to Parliament and said, gentlemen and gentle ladies, what do we do for us to produce? That's how all these parastatals like GMB came to CSC. It was this objective to say I must feed my people. I must make sure that I produce cotton in the country. I must make sure that I produce tobacco in the country to the level and extent that they cannot ignore me. It's so that I begin to export. So that's how our agriculture boomed during this regime. So I'm saying this so that you understand that it is about leadership.
Yes.
It's about stewardship.
Yes.
To say this is what is going to happen. Let us prepare. Let us fund communal farmers. Let us fund subsistence farming so that we incentivize our people. When we incentivize, not giving people a cup of seed. No. You come up with a deliberate program to say this is government support towards citizens.
Even commercial farmers, let us give them title to the land.
Not only giving them title, but let's also give them genuine input. Not through corruption and given on a partisan basis. Let's give commercial farmers. Let's support people who are known. What did we do in Zimbabwe? We chased away farmers. They are doing well in Zambia. They are doing well in
Australia, in different parts of the world.
So we're supposed to relook. The current regime says no. We're compensating. Again,
which is another issue that they're going to compensate the former white commercial farmers. 3.5 billion.
You cannot do that
US dollars
because we are increasing domestic debt and
burdening the taxpayer because it's us who's going to be taxed to pay. But our ancestors were not paid when the whites took the farms.
That's why now you've got a huge challenge.
The ideological deficit of this country.
Exactly. Betrayal of
the liberation struggle
itself.
They have betrayed.
We cannot, brother.
ZANU-PF is now a part of
apologetic about taking land because land belonged to us
initially before 1890.
These people, it was dispossessed from us violently, so we don't owe them anything.
So we are compensating for being violated through violence.
So it's an ideological concoction by the regime. It's a neoliberal agenda. At the same time, the Mtsongas want to remain saying we're subscribed to Marxism.
No.
So this concoction is at the stand of the contradictions of the current.
So are you saying in the current ZANU-PF existence is confused ideological?
Of course, you cannot state right now, brother.
The campus.
You cannot state what is ZANU's ideological disposition. You cannot actually trace. If you hear Mthuli Ncube speaking,
you wonder.
Mthuli say we want a private sector-led economy. You wonder whether does Mthuli Ncube know what was the objective of ZANU-PF when it was founded in
1963 at Highfields?
You get the point.
Yes.
It's crazy to be listening to
the current guy.
And we don't subscribe to a predominantly statist economic development. We want a hybrid. The state must play a critical.
That's where the clarity is lacking here. But the private sector equally.
Because private sector and capital, brother Mlambo. What people don't understand is that private sector is very good in making profit, but it is bad in redistributing profit.
That's true.
That's where the state must come in. And also, brother,
And the state can have companies.
and
as
you
well.
see, the ideological question goes back to our engagement with the Bretton Woods institution, the Paris Club of Lenders.
Thank you for highlighting.
Because it is important when we are dealing with these institutions to be cognizant. Look at ISA. ISA, because that is the challenge of, that's where the historical challenges of our economy. We had a dual enclave economy that we inherited from the Smith regime.
And we failed.
What we were supposed to do was to say, look, this is the structure of our economy. This is how we're going to restructure it. We need to balance, because the national question, according to us in the alternative in Zimbabwe, is about accountability and equity. These are the things that we must fix in our country. There is huge inequality in Zimbabwe.
True.
The gap between the rich and the poor is so big.
What they call the Gini coefficient.
So our objective as the alternative is to close the gap, the Gini coefficient.
How do you close the inequality gap?
So what you need to do now, you don't have to just subscribe to the Bretton Woods proposal of growth without equity.
Okay.
Until Nqobizitha, I've seen so many reports that say, no, we've recorded growth in our economy. Surplus in numbers. It is quantitative. But you must understand that economic growth must not only be quantitative. It must be qualitative. Okay. How does it become qualitative? The standard of life, job creation, how much Zimbabweans are surviving, the levels of poverty. So even if you've got good numbers in your economy, when people, 70% of your people are living in abject poverty,
or less than $1 a day.
Less than $1 a day. So there's no growth.
So your argument is to bridge the gap of inequality between the rich and the poor, we need a productive economy that creates jobs.
Of course.
Because if you look at the statistics from the Zimstats, and remember Zimstats is a government-owned institution, so when you see figures from Zimstats, know that the government is actually allowed it to publish those figures. Because remember today, banned Zimstats from publishing inflation figures. Zimstats recently, this very year, said 3.5 million young Zimbabweans who are economically active are unemployed, and they're in the informal sector. So if you have 3.5 million of your most economically active people being informally employed, that means they're selling chewing gum in the streets, care and stuff like that. You are missing an opportunity to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. Because if you have a productive economy, which comes to the issue of around capacity utilization, which we were discussing before the show started, that this Confederation of Zimbabwean Industries, we're talking about inequality. It said in a recent survey, actually released in May, that manufacturing has fallen down from 14.3% in 2020, between 2020 and 2023 to 9% currently. Manufacturing sector alone, so its share of GDP is 9%. But when you compare it to 1980 to 1990 or 1990 to early 2000s, it contributed to around 23% of its share to GDP, which meant that majority of the people were employed in the manufacturing sector. So inequality was a bit lower because people were employed, and if your people are employed, Comrade Ostalos, they earn an income.
Of course.
When they earn an income, they pay income tax. After they pay income tax, the government takes the income tax, but it doesn't end there. The people go and spend the money, the employed people, in the economy. So if you go to TM supermarket as an employed artisan, you buy bread and milk. You pay for that particular bread and milk, you are charged value-added tax. You're also creating jobs for the farmer who grows the wheat. So there is a supply chain. Where aggregate demand is more, it means that there's more money circulating in the economy, 100%. And the state can collect tax through revenue. But if manufacturing is contributing only 9%, it means the 3.5 million young people who should be in industries, who, Workington, Willowfell, Bulao, you yourself, Bulao, born and bred. I was born and bred in Manicaland. I know how industrial Manicaland was, in particular the city of Mutare. But now most of our people, Mutare bought in paper mills, we used to produce paper for the whole of Africa. They're now churches and private schools. So I because the data is about providing the solutions.
Of course.
And we are saying employment creation can be a tool to address inequality.
100%.
Yes. So you can continue.
So what we have to do, Brother Mlambo.
Yes.
Number one, we need to produce.
Yes.
We are an import-based economy. We need to start to produce, Brother Mlambo. But I say we propose. We say that the national question, in our respectful view, is about accountability
and equity.
I've touched on equity, the inequality in our country.
Accountability.
What is the purpose of accountability?
Yes.
We need a government that is accountable.
To who?
I'll give you an example. The challenge that we are facing in this country is corruption. the Auditor General's report, like you were saying, says that our country missed, up to this very day, we don't know what happened to 3 aeroplanes. They disappeared.
3 aeroplanes.
Just like a fly. So
Yeah.
no, it was here, I can no longer see.
Yes, Zimbabwe couldn't
but these are
have.
huge aeroplanes that
Yeah.
could carry 100 plus people.
Yes.
It disappeared.
Yes.
And no one has been accountable.
Yes.
Secondly, Brother Mlambo,
Yes.
the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission
Yes.
agrees with the Auditor General
Yeah.
and provides more data to say we are losing $1.2 billion on illicit financial flows.
In the mining sector alone, in particular gold.
You get the point.
Yes.
So what that means is that every month in this country, we lose almost
100 million.
100 million.
And Kazembe, the Minister of Home Affairs, said that I think 2 years ago that Zimbabwe uses $100 million in the gold sector alone on a monthly basis.
And let me tell you where is the problem. Why are we losing gold so much? It is because
No one is accountable.
for 2 years, Brother Mlambo, the presidency has been holding a bill.
Mines and Minerals Amendment Bill.
That is supposed to be signed. The Mines and Minerals Bill's purpose is to ensure that we protect a gold production in this country so that all the gold we produce should go to Fidelity.
And also we formalize that is no small scale.
Because if we don't formalize,
there'll be chaos.
They won't agree to formalize because they want
illicitly.
artisan miners to continue so that they can buy gold.
Yes.
And what happens when you don't formalize artisan miners? They will continue to use parallel structures to sell their gold. Someone will buy it, Henrietta Rushwa, buy it from the
6 kgs of gold
and take it
at
to
the airport
because she's a
politically exposed person,
and then she'll proceed the airport. And that is what is contributing to illicit financial flows. Gold is being smuggled.
So you are saying, because in the interest of time, you are saying if you are to plug the illicit mineral outflows and financial flows in the gold sector, let's say 100 million that we are losing, government confirmed by Kazembe, now Justice Matanda Moyo, who is now NPA Prosecutor General, said we are losing around $1 billion in the mining sector alone to illicit activities. Your supposition is the alternative, is if we are to be accountable to the people through parliament, and if we are to use the institutions of the state, which are already in existence, our Financial Intelligence Unit, ZIMRA, Criminal Investigation Department, CID, the Central Intelligence Organization, the Zimbabwe Republic Police, if they are allowed to do their work independently without any political interference and be accountable, what can that amount of money do to Mpilo,
let me tell you, Brother,
and stuff like that?
You see, the fact that the Auditor General has reported the anti-corruption produces
such damning reports
shows that we've got competent people in the Financial Intelligence Unit. We've got competent people in the Zimbabwe Public Police. We've got competent people in the intelligence services. What we must do, we must become accountable, not interfere, like you said, in these institutions, so that all these plugs are plugged. Once we do that, we plug all these holes. How much will 1.2 billion do to Parenyat? How much will it do to Mpilo Hospital? How much will it do to a roads network in this country? So we're losing, and this is only in the gold sector.
We're not talking about
let's talk
diamonds.
about diamond.
Chrome.
Zanu said through Mugabe says we lost
15 billion. Mugabe said lost 15
You get the point. Let's talk about taxation in this country, which is one of the issues that we must fix when we want to deal with stabilization of the economy in a macro level. One, we must begin to produce. Also, what we must do, we must empower people who are capable and protect local industries.
I agree with
you
that.
cannot protect local industries if you're not supporting them. Look at cotton production.
In the textile industry.
There's no reason for us in the textile industry to continue to be importing all these things. We must protect our industry, but also support them. There's no reason for us. Look at what's happening in the tobacco sector, agriculture sector itself. So all this investment by government will help us to begin to produce. Once we produce, we
create jobs.
We also deal with stability in policies. There is a lot of unpredictability. Nqobizitha comes in one moment and announces a new policy. The digital instrument is distributed like confetti in this country. The amendment of the constitution itself speaks to instability. How many times have we amended the constitution where we are supposed to be implementing the constitution? We are amputating the same.
So Look at the figures. We say that FDI is declining because
of course,
there's no certainty.
No one will come to a country
where there's no certainty. Where civil society is criminalized.
Where patriotism is legalized. I must feel proud to
be Zimbabwean. Not to have a patriotic act.
It must not be forced upon me. By my standards of living, I must say I'm proud to be Zimbabwean.
I'm loyal to the flag.
Because I can live freely, travel all over the world. People are proud of their countries because of the stability, because of the government that listens to its people and so forth.
But speaking of patriotism, in the interest of time, I understood you the alternative that you are part of is speaking of the national question as defined, that there's need to be equity and accountability. So this is clear to the people. But let's move on in the interest of time, Comrade Osalos. We can sit here for the next 3 hours. I want you to touch on, because you touched on a very, very important aspect of patriotism and the love for country. Let's talk about migration. The massive migration that is happening. People leaving this country for the United Kingdom and South Africa, but in particular, people going to work in the healthcare or social care sector in the United Kingdom. The Home Office in the United Kingdom recently released statistics, Comrade Ostalos, that says the top 3 countries which sends healthcare workers to the United Kingdom are number 1, Nigeria, number 2, India, number 3, Zimbabwe. So you have people trained in sociology, psychology, business studies, all going to be carers in the United Kingdom because the economy is not performing. When you link patriotism to production, I like that, because you can't legislate patriotism when I'm hungry. Say, be patriotic. When I'm unemployed, but yet I'm running away to go and do care work in the United Kingdom.
The class of 2017, Brother Mlambo, who gone down to history, is one of the classes that dehumanized our people.
Yes.
You must understand the ripple effect, the sociological effect of the economic challenges. Our people are not just moving into the diaspora, but they are going there to be subjected to deep-seated racism in the United Kingdom, in America, in Australia, and so forth.
And xenophobia
next door. In South Africa. Yeah. So the dehumanizing effect. So you are there, your brother has been bent down for running a spaza shop in Soweto. Yeah. You then think about, why am I here? Why am I not in my country? It's economic challenges. It's a government. It's misgovernance. So how do you become proud of your government when it has costed lives in its ripple effects of the economic challenges? And you must understand, Brother, the challenge of this migration is not only those in the social science sector, but more importantly, the STEM sector. The STEM sector are critical in the development of an economy.
That's true.
So if your biomedical scientists are moving out of the country, if your engineers are moving out of the country, so who's developing your country? You are left with this Wawan.
People start that's
why the dominant program in government television is Wawan.
Not AI.
Not artificial intelligence.
Not industrialization.
Not nanotechnology. Not
the Internet of
Things. Slogans. It's Chipo 2030. That is the dominant political conversation. It's not about how do we build our economy, how do we make Zimbabwe back to be the jewel.
How do we make skilled people like Atam Jambara come in? I mean, he's one of the most decorated robotics.
People ask him, they say to him, Tambara, shame on you.
How can you be Zimbabwe with this brain?
Is somewhere stuck in MIT and NASA. That is the challenge of this country.
So Zimbabwe doesn't have the capacity to contain people like Ntambara to be productive.
Zimbabweans are dominant internationally in the industry.
Yes.
We've got the chief person in Google, Manika is there. But look at what's happening to our telecommunication industry.
Look at the person heading the ICT ministry.
Not only that one, we not even got there. You get the point. But look at the person who started Econet. Where is he?
He stays in London.
Thanks to the politics of Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF.
This is another issue about the capitalistic class.
Look at who is heading Amnesty International right now. Look at who's heading all the big Oxfam.
I mean,
we've got Zimbabweans there.
We've got Zimbabwean engineers who are managing London Underground, the train system.
You get the point. But these are Zimbabweans. But in Zimbabwe, what is the state of the railway line? They're actually removing grass
on a railway track. Comrade Ostalos, let's now talk about the role that in the alternative accountability and equity. What will be the role of state-owned enterprises in your government? Let's say you get into government tomorrow. What will be the role of the state, especially SOEs, in employment creation, in bringing services to our people?
Thank you very much, Brother Mlambo. A Chamisa-led government will focus fundamentally on these following issues. Number one, it will prioritize the revival of parastatals and their role and in the development discourse. Institutions like railways, institutions
GMB, Kotko, CSC, CESA, Zinwa.
Those are critical. If you look at their contribution, look at ADA's contribution post-independence to the GDP of our country. That is the first and primary thing that a Chamisa government will focus. But that will follow after us having a clear microeconomic stability program. Because the current issue is a key issue. The
you have to
ZiG issue is a part-time currency, according to
100%.
us. It is not a permanent currency. And I must state it to Zimbabweans. We believe that Zimbabwe must have its own currency. It is very advantageous
for us to have our own currency.
Development of our country.
Yes.
Right? But to manage a currency, it's a very serious issue. It's not a slogan issue. You can't hire. I've just came across a report.
Yes.
Some people hired people like Jonathan Moyo to do songs. So they're in the midst of
producing
coming
a
up
song.
with a song to promote ZiG.
Yes.
But the iron of those at the helm of the state, there's someone
a song to promote a currency.
Let's not only go that to the economic fundamentals. Let's go to the culture and the psychology of this issue. Someone sings a song promoting ZiG.
Yes.
You say you have done well. I'm going to give you $.
As part of a consultancy payment.
Someone does well in front of the president.
He's given $800.
They say I'm going to give you $.
A minister was said go and buy a suit.
But this is the #1 promoter
of the local currency.
But he's removing $. From his own.
What does that do to confidence?
It tells a story that we don't understand economic fundamentals.
So in a Chamisa-led government, you're saying we're going to have a mono currency, which is the Zimbabwean dollar.
What we're going to do interimly, the Chamisa government will introduce a mono currency, which is the $, just to stabilize.
Yes.
And then we produce. Once we produce, we also have economic stability in terms of our policy pronouncement.
Let's say for a five-year period.
If Brother Mlambo, you go to Zimbabwe and tell them about RBZ, they're reminded of $1 trillion. They're reminded of Patrick Chinamasa raiding people's accounts. So a Chamisa government will promise people and show people that we now have policy stability.
Okay.
We are not going to raid people. We're going to some extent
so people can bring their money in there,
so that you can put your money and remove it anytime that you
then
want.
later on introduce our currency.
And we're going also to stop the RBZ from being used as a platform for quasi-fiscal activities.
Independence of the central bank.
You get the point. Once we do that, there's stability. And then in the long term, when we also deal with our gold reserves, now, in a mode, not to say we're going to introduce currency backed by 1 ton of gold.
And only 30% of the ZiG is in circulation.
So we are also going to deal with our gold reserves. Once we are clear, Zimbabweans know how much gold we have. They have confidence, and then we go back, and we are going to be producing. Then we go back to our own currency.
Thank you so much, Comrade Ostalos. So I like, because time is always jealous and stuff like that. There are so many issues to talk about, but I like that the alternative is about accountability and equity. It's about having our own currency. But first we have to stabilize and produce and create jobs and manufacture and improve capacity utilization, industrialize, plug leakages in the gold sector.
Dealing with corruption.
Remember, and stuff like that.
What this means is that our developmental model places the state
at the center of development. So it's a developmental state.
It's a developmental state
with capacity.
Agenda, where the state plays a central role, but with the private sector.
Of course, we can't shy away from the private sector.
We have to make sure that, like I was talking about, policy consistency and stability. Certainty, and making sure that there is a conducive environment
for business to thrive.
But regulate
people might think that when you're saying business thrive, you're talking about foreign companies. No. Even domestic companies. Because if you read one of the newspapers called Business Times, it's a government-owned entity newspaper saying local business are complaining to the government that are busy that they are not getting foreign currency that they need to go and buy inputs from outside the country. So if you are failing to even support your own local capitalists, your own domestic capitalist class to develop its productive capacity, what move?
In fact, one of the most important agendas of a Chamisa government is to actually produce black capitalists in this country.
we need that.
We need to have our own black people.
Industrialists. People are not to produce.
Not for them to come and own all the means of production. No. They must continue to be owned by the people. And the state plays that role.
Hence our SOEs and stuff like that.
But that state must be accountable. It must not be a state that owns the means of production for primitive accumulation of selfish individuals in government. No. It must be for the benefit of the ordinary people.
It must be for the benefit of the ordinary people.
And remember, Brother Mlambo, also this will inform our foreign policy. How we interface with other countries in the region. How we interface with other economic players.
Even how we interface with the Africa Continental Free Trade agreement that we are part of, which seeks to make trade and markets easily accessible to the people of Africa and the movement. Zimbabwe can talk about continental free trade when we are not even trading easily with our close neighbors, when we are not even trading easily amongst our own selves, when exporters are required to surrender 25% of their foreign currency, and that 25% they're given local currency. What does it do to confidence and stuff like that? But let's move on as we conclude, Comrade Ostalos. We cannot shy away from talking about South Africa. South Africa is Africa's biggest economy. South Africa is Africa's most industrialized country. In fact, South Africa by GDP, it has a GDP of around 500 billion US dollars. And you know the relationship that has existed between ZANU-PF and the African National Congress and the importance of South Africa in the region. There were elections recently in South Africa, and the liberation movement, the African National Congress, oh my God, it lost quite a significant share of its votes. I think it ended up getting around 40 or 41%, showing that the people of South Africa are also fed up to some extent with the liberation movement and how it has managed the affairs of the state for the past 30 years. What do you think a government of national unity that has been promulgated, what President Ramaphosa said there's going to be a GNU in South Africa, its foreign policy, what would you like to see as someone who's coming from the alternative, its attitude towards Zimbabwe?
I think that the answer to why the African National Congress has declined its vote to just about 40% in South Africa shows one thing, that
yes,
one can't be a hero in two struggles. Prince Fanon said every generation has its own struggles and its own heroes. You ought to understand, we are part of the democratization agenda and the democratic struggle.
And the economic freedom struggle, yeah.
We can only be part and parcel of that struggle, but we cannot be part and parcel of
another
struggle.
Yeah.
We have to understand that leaders lead and live. And that is the signal that is coming across the African continent.
Hence the decline.
The objective of the liberation movement was to bring political independence in the African continent, and they achieved that objective. So to continue clinging the liberation narrative is not sustainable.
For AMA 2000, they can't relate.
The liberation movement ought to understand that for it not to be a one generation movement, it must produce new leaders, which is what President Morgan Tsvangirai was always emphasizing. That the MDC cannot be a one generation, but it must continue to produce and reproduce leaders that answer their unique generational questions. So that is the first understanding of the dynamics in South Africa. The proposal for government of national unity and others for a coalition basically answers what South Africans decided. They say, in this part of the country, we might want this one. In this part of the country, we might want... So basically, you guys must work together. So they must look at their ideological issues. How parties are going to sustain, because the objective by the ANC is to go for stability. What is the route that can stabilize the South African economy? To them, it is the government of national unit. The opposition, particularly Comrade Julius Malema, the president of the EFF, are more for a coalition. But the coalition in them can bring people with a clear and similar ideological standpoint.
So that you know and that you are driving this particular agenda. So for Zimbabwe,
so what that means for Zimbabwe, it means that Zimbabwe ought to understand its role in the region. And South Africa particularly plays a key role in the Zimbabwean question. Because the movement of Zimbabweans from Zimbabwe to South Africa is no longer a foreign policy issue.
No. It's a domestic issue for South Africa. So
South Africa ought now, whether it is a coalition government or it is a government of national unity, it must now become more clear
on these people
and become to be unapologetic
to say
in its role in resolving the Zimbabwean question.
And that is the question of democratization.
Of course.
And the rigged elections as confirmed by the report by SADC.
Its legacy on the government of national unity
in Zimbabwe through Thabo Mbeki.
So because of that historical experience and the legacy and the contribution of South Africa ought to become unequivocal. That's why you saw people now saying, no, Fikile Mbalule, you're taking advice from Prakash. And this is what the ANC
you have been punished.
It is because of this relationship, this economic relationship between Zimbabwe and South Africa, which South Africa ought to become decisive now going forward.
South Africa ought to become decisive on the Zimbabwean question, and we hope that whatever outcome of the government of national unity that's going to exist in South Africa, the foreign policy question, or it's now a domestic policy question for South Africa, the Zimbabwean question, that they should put pressure on ZANU-PF to ensure that there is stability and the leadership crisis emanating from the contested election of August 2023 is addressed.
That
Comrade
Brother
Ostalos
Mlambo-
in brief.
That Brother Mlambo also does not relegate
Yes.
the domestic role of every Zimbabwean ourselves
In
included,
liberating our own
in
selves.
also resolving
And organizing.
Zimbabwean question.
And you have been
The
saying
role of the region is
you are
critical,
organizing.
but there's also a more
Yeah.
important role of us organizing from below
Yes.
and defining our destiny as a people.
Thank you so much, Comrade Ostalos. We would have loved to discuss other issues, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Russia-Ukraine war, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, the different aspects of foreign policy that are bedeviling the world, the crisis that the world is facing. But this A-Tete, Comrade Ostalos, as I indicated when we started, that it's reflecting on Zimbabwe post the November 2017 coup. It's already been 6 or 7 years since the coup, and nothing much to show in terms of development, in terms of the transformation of the livelihoods of our people. So let me allow you to give your parting shots to the people of Zimbabwe, address the people. What would you want to say to the people of Zimbabwe in as far as the democratization struggle is concerned?
Thank you very much, fellow Zimbabweans. Our preoccupation is to build a credible alternative. Every struggle has its own challenges. Every struggle has its own bruises. The alternative has been under attack and assault. We keep focus because we understand that before, in no time, as Zimbabweans, at the end of the day, with all these struggles, with all these tribulations and challenges, we have to forge ahead. We have to fight ahead. And one day, we're going to reach destiny. We have no doubt in our mind that we're going to make it to the appointment with the future.
Thank you so much, Comrade Ostalos. Thank you so much, our fellow citizens. Thank you for tuning in into the show. We promise that we are going to produce more episodes and have more guests in the future. But as we always say, that to struggle is man's reality. And without the struggle, there can be no progress. So, fellow Zimbabweans, as Comrade Ostalos has said, let us continue to keep our eyes and ears open on the way forward that the advocate Nelson Chamisa will give in terms of how we're going to prosecute this particular struggle for change. Thank you so much for joining us, Comrade Ostalos. Thank you for coming on the show. And I always say that better is not good enough. The best is yet to come. I think.